What's up, internet friends, and welcome to the Isn't It Crazy podcast. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to the companies that have been supporting me since I started. The first company I want to talk about is All Things AMARE. It's a crafting company started by Jazz and Campos, and she could customize anything from cups, t-shirts, shadow boxes. She even does this dope thing where she puts like a music player on clear glass, and you guys could pick whatever song you want, and you can put it around your room, give it to your significant other. It's a really cool gift idea. So go check out her Etsy page or her Instagram and see what she's capable of and get your orders in today. Another company that's been supporting me since day one is Plantitas. Now, the owner of Plantitas has been on the podcast before, and what she does is she makes artificial and real life cacti arrangements. And they're great to put around your room. They're a great gift idea. And as of Saturday, August 22nd, she will be doing a walkthrough at Old Town in Bloomingdale's from 2 to 6. So if you're in the Chicago area and have nothing to do this weekend, go there. It's a great idea. The festival allows small companies to show off their products. There's going to be a food truck, music, and it's just something to do. So go support your small businesses and hope to see you guys there. And last but not least, after you guys are done listening to me, you guys can go listen to In the Air Tonight podcast. It's a funny podcast. It covers anything from anime to biracial dating. And the host on Trail is very funny, unscripted, and very interesting. So once you guys are done here, look at the description down below and you guys could see or check out any of the companies I mentioned. All right, so today I want to talk about how to systematically get better at betting. You know, this weekend I went out and like anything in my life, I have these little rules that help me get by. And I threw those rules out the window. I don't know if I was just kind of hyped over the fights or maybe I was a little too drunk and I made a bet without even thinking about it and I lost some money. So, what better way to remind myself of what I should be doing and teach you guys what I do to win most of my bets? You know, betting isn't a for sure thing. And even if you have a science to it, you can still end up losing anyways. So, today, that's what I'm going to cover. So, the rules for my rules to systematically get better at betting, number one has to be think like the house, not like a fanboy. You know, I get that everybody has their favorite soccer club or their favorite fighter. And sometimes we even bet on our country when they're playing in the FIFA World Cup or in the Olympics. But that mentality will lose you more bets than win you bets. Because if you think like the house, something that is pretty much made to take your money and not lose money, that there's a reason why these casinos get so big and these hotels are worth billions of dollars. It's because their system is built on how to take your money. So the sooner you start thinking like the house, the sooner you start winning more. And what the house does is the house doesn't have a favorite team or a favorite fighter or some blind loyalty to any sports franchise out there. They just see the winners and the losers. And what they do best is they do their research. They have analysts that weigh the pros and cons of a soccer team or a fighter against who this soccer team or fighter is about to compete against. And they weigh the pros and cons of the opposite team or fighter. And then they choose who do they think is going to win and who's going to lose based on their research. And then they set up the betting line. So the house already chose who they're going to win. And that's why they're called favorites. And then the underdog, where you can make your money, is the guy who can lose. You know, you could bet on the favorite too, but you wouldn't make a lot of money. You would have to bet a lot of money to make some type of money. As for the underdog, you can bet some type of money and make a lot of money. But see, this is where a lot of fanboys fall into the trap. You know, they choose their team or their fighter or their nation because they're so loyal to them, they can't fathom betting against the other team, even if the odds aren't in their favor. So a lot of fanboys end up losing a lot of money. So rule number one is you have to think like the house, not like a fanboy. You have to take your emotion out of picking who you're going to pick. You can't see them because they're your favorite. You can't pick them because they're your favorite. You have to pick them because you know they're going to win. And now you're wondering, well, if the house has done its research, how am I supposed to win any bet? Well, the way you level that playing field is rule number two, actually doing some research. For example, when I'm betting on a UFC fight like Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa, I'm going to go watch three of their last fights for each fighter. And what I'm going to do is pay attention to what each fighter is good at and what each fighter is bad at. And then I'll weigh the pros and cons. Can Adesanya take Paulo Costa's punches? Can Adesanya systematically box Paulo Costa and beat him that way? What happens if it goes on the ground? You have to ask all these questions before you even hit the betting lines. Because if you don't know any of that, then you're just making a blind bet. When I make my bets, it's because I've done the research and I'm confident that I'm picking a good fighter that might win. There's a lot of underdogs that these casinos oversee and that people never bet on because they don't know who they are. But just because they didn't do an hour's worth of research. There's a rule in fighting that you don't bet on the main card because the lines are so close to each other, so there's not a lot of money to be made. So you bet on the prelims and the prelims to the prelims because these are unknown fighters. And the casinos are kind of doing the research, but not really. And what happens is the lines are open to making a lot of money. So, rule number two, doing your research can take you a very long way. And it could change that gut feeling from I think this guy could win to I know this guy's going to win. And when you start betting with confidence because you know they're going to win, you win more than you lose. But that takes me to rule number three, which is how much are you willing to risk for the reward? If you're going to risk $10 and only win five, that's probably not a good bet. But if you risk $10 and win $100, that's a really good bet. You have to ask yourself, what are you comfortable with losing? Because you can't lose on a bet. There's always a risk to it. So is the reward worth the risk? It's something you got to ask yourself all the time. Are you willing to lose $10 to make $100? Are you willing to lose $1,000 to make $10,000? See, the more money, obviously, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. We all know that, but you have to have a limit to your gambling. Usually, what happens is sometimes people end up just out of dumb luck winning a couple bets, and they all of a sudden they think they're this like betting genius, so they go out and bet a shit ton of money, and then they lose it, and then they spiral out of control. They're trying to make their money back, and they're making more desperate bets, and then you end up getting a second mortgage to cover your bets. And you would think that's like, oh, that only happens once in a while. It happens to a lot of people. There's a lot of people that owe these casinos a lot of money because they don't follow the rules. They don't set a certain limit of, okay, if I lose this much, this is where I stop. This is where I could walk away. So the risk and the reward have to be in the back of your mind the whole time. How much am I willing to lose and be comfortable walking away with? And how much am I willing to win and walking out? And my last rule to systematically beating the casinos is understanding that luck is only 10% of the process. Because every time you make a bet, you're kind of hoping you get lucky. You're kind of hoping that things go your way. And sometimes they don't. You could do the rest of the rules. You can do your research. You can think like the house. And you could end up losing anyways. For me, betting is just kind of fun. It's something I do to add a little more spice to the fights or anything I'm watching because there's this like, oh God, I really hope he wins because if he wins, I make $200. There's more drama to the game when you start betting. But you have to understand that sometimes these things don't go the way that they're supposed to. You could have a sure winner and something like what happened this weekend to Sugar Shane O'Malley, some freak accident, some low calf kick, and homeboy can't win the fight, and I lose $50. I thought I had picked a really good fighter, and I did. And usually he is good, and he's gonna get that first round knockout. But luck wasn't on my side. That 10% wasn't on my side, and for some reason he ended up losing that fight. So you got to understand that you can cross your T's and dot your I's, and at the end of the day, you might end up losing anyways. And you have to be willing to walk away from it and not get desperate and lose more money. So hopefully these rules help you guys out. I know they definitely help me out. When I follow these rules, I usually win more than I lose. There was a UFC card where I got all 5 fights right. And it was because I did my research. I made sure to see the previous fights of each fighter, and then I made my choices on that. And speaking about playoffs and making choices, the NBA playoffs are going on right now, and I thought I'd make my choices in the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. So I'm going to start with the Western Conference, and after I'm done choosing, you guys could comment down below and let me know if I chose wrong or why do you think this team is going to win or not. But we're going to start off with number 1 and number 8 in the Western Conference, which is the Lakers versus Portland. Now, my choice is the Lakers. After this week's playoffs in the first round, Portland are up 1-0. And what happens is Portland just hit the three better than the Lakers did. And do I think Portland has a chance at the upset? I do. And it'd be fun to see LeBron get eliminated in the first round. But I don't see that happening because the Lakers have the size, they have the nuclear option, which is LeBron James. And when you push LeBron James up against the wall, he tends to play better and harder. And now he has a really good number 2, the best number 2 he's ever had in AD. So I think they're going to battle it out. I think this is going to go all 7 games. And it's not looking good for the Lakers in the later rounds. If you have to go through a tough first round matchup, the second one doesn't get easier when they're going to meet. For me, it's going to be the Rockets. Just because if the Rockets could figure out how to efficiently use James Harden and Westbrook, they're unstoppable. They're a very good offensive team. Obviously, D'Antoni likes the 3. They have the whole your best defense is a good offense. So I just think they're going to outscore OKC. And they're probably going to meet the Lakers in the second round. So that doesn't look very good for the Lakers if they got to meet Westbrook and Harden in the second round. Although Harden does choke on the playoffs, so we'll see how that goes. So yeah, so for the first bracket, I'm picking the Lakers over Portland and the Rockets over OKC. Now in the second bracket, it's the Nuggets versus the Jazz. And what can I say? The Nuggets have one of the best rookies in the bubble. His name is slipping from my mind right now, but he's making a big impact. He was named the rookie of the bubble. They're doing this whole like MVP of the bubble and stuff like that. And Lillard has it for the bubble with 37 points average. And I don't think Lillard is actually going to score that much, given that, they're going to have LeBron or AD or McGee covering him. So his numbers are going to go down. But as for the Nuggets and the Jazz, I just see the Nuggets having a lot more athletic, youthful players than the Jazz do. A little bit more of experience when it comes to veterans on the team. And that experience in the playoffs is vital to winning games, especially when you hit game number 4, 5, and 6, when you have to close these things out and learn how to win a series. So I clearly think the Nuggets are better at that section than the Jazz. So I'll pick the Nuggets to win 4-1 over the Jazz. And for the last team in the Western Conference, the Clippers versus the Mavs. Now, there was some controversy when it came to the first game of the Clippers versus the Mavs because Porzingis got ejected. And I heard a stat on Colin Cowherd's show that said that when the Mavs had to close a game, they only closed 3 out of 12 games. When the Clippers closed 12 out of 8 games when the game was separated by 5 points at the end of the fourth quarter. So obviously the Clippers are the clear number one choice. Everybody's picking them to win the final. I think this is going to be a breeze for the Clippers just because one, they have more playoff experience, they have more veterans, and when you have a duo like you have in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and you got Pat Beverly, it's kind of tough to beat them, and that's why they're getting picked as the clear number one in the Western Conference. So yeah, those are my picks for the first round of the Western Conference: the Lakers, the Rockets, the Nuggets, and the Clippers. Now moving on to the Eastern Conference, the first games are the Bucks and Orlando. Now Orlando, just like in the Western Conference, won against the Bucks. So both teams on both conference number eights are 1-0 versus the one seeds of each conference. And some people are chalking it up to Giannis not being there. I think Giannis, obviously, he's the best in the East. So when he comes back, he's going to demolish them. I think this was Orlando's one game. I don't think Orlando's going to win any more games, and the Bucks are going to go 4-1. So I got the Bucks winning and moving on. And in the next bracket, you got the Pacers versus the Heat. Now, when it comes to this matchup, I'm going to pick the Heat just because you got Jimmy Butler, you have Spoelstra, you have the Heat who have more athletic players, and everybody's athletic. When you hear me say they're more athletic, it just means that these guys are taller, faster, and are better shooters all around. When it comes to very close situations, these are the type of guys that are going to get the necessary buckets to win the game. And when you take a team like that and you give them Spoelstra, who's won 3 championships, obviously with LeBron, a well-coached team is going to go very far in the playoffs. I don't see them getting to the Eastern Conference final, but they can make a very far push. And they're going to give the Bucks some type of problem. But I got the Heat winning 4-0. This is one of the very few sweeps I see in the playoffs, and they'll meet the Bucks in the second round. All right, moving on. So you got Boston versus 76ers. Now, the 76ers is probably the worst team in the whole playoffs just because of their chemistry. They don't have a clear cut number one. You have Embiid and Simmons, and if I had to choose between either one, I'm going with Simmons as the better player. I think Embiid's immature, kind of lacks discipline, gets angry too fast, and thinks he's better than everybody else, and that kind of fucks with his game. If they could cut ties, I think the 76ers are better off, but this is a prime example of why you shouldn't tank for 4 years. Because you tank for 4 years, you promise the city and the fans that they're going to get this amazing team, and they did get a shit ton of number ones, but they're all busts because they don't work well together. And if a basketball team doesn't have that chemistry, you're not going to win very much games. So I'm going to go with the Boston Celtics, who have a better chemistry, who have Jason Tatum, who's one of the best players in the Eastern Conference, to win the thing. And last but not least, in the Eastern Conference, you got the Raptors versus the Nets. Now, the Raptors are probably going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals just because they were good without Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi has this load management schedule that he usually does. And every time he was out, they still won. They have really good players. They're very well coached, and they have the experience that it takes to make a very long run into the NBA playoffs. And now that everybody's healthy and you're not doing this back and forth traveling everywhere, it's going to show that the teams that are good at making long playoff runs are going to benefit from not having to travel or go to away games. It's going to be a very interesting bubble playoffs for that reason. Travel does take a toll on players. There's a reason why people want the number one seed is because they want to end if they have to end the series, they want to end it at their house. But that all gets eliminated because pretty much everybody has home court advantage. Everybody's in the same place. Nobody travels. The crowds aren't louder or quieter. You're going to see a lot of these teams go the full 7 series games, like the Raptors and the Boston Celtics. I would say the only teams right now that are probably going to sweep are most likely the Raptors, Boston Celtics, and the Heat. That's who I would say is going to sweep. The rest of the matchups, they're going to go 6 or 7 games. So my picks for the Eastern Conference are going to be the Bucks, the Heat, Boston, and the Raptors for round 1. And as the rounds keep going, I'll keep making my picks. Hopefully, I'm right. And if you guys think I chose somebody that I shouldn't have chose, please let me know. I would like to argue and kind of go back and forth. I live for that shit. All right, so I'm running out of time. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully my betting tips helped. Hopefully I gave you guys a little better insight on who's going to win the NBA championship or who's going to go to the second round. If you haven't yet liked or subscribed, please do that. And thank you guys for watching. I'm grateful for all the support you guys give me and I appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next episode.